business taxes. Was stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackheads and the Sackhead Clan. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. But for those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio. The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
A few moments ago, I placed a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. And as I stepped back and stood during the moment of silence that followed, I said a small prayer. And it occurred to me that each of my predecessors has had a similar moment, and I wondered if our prayers weren't very much the same, if not identical. We celebrate Veterans Day on the anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I. The armistice that began on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And I wonder, in fact, if all Americans' prayers aren't the same as those I mentioned a moment ago. For all we can ever do for our heroes is remember them and remember what they did, and memories are transmitted through words. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise. We see them as something like the founding fathers, grave and gray-haired. But most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. And all we can do is remember. There's always someone who is remembering for us. No matter what time of year it is or what time of day, there are always people who come to this cemetery, leave a flag or a flower or a little rock on a headstone. And they stop
Ladies and gentlemen, it is we can have the freedoms to come on here and be the jackasses that we are and sit in the back of the room and throw spitballs at all the big boys and quote-unquote big boys in media and politics and everything else. And, all the way back from those
what day it was, because I've been literally all over the state.
traveling, or do you need me to call in? I said, no, he's in studio. And he's like, oh, good, you two can throw rocks at hookers together. The assumption that that's the case, it just hurts my feelings. Now,
why would that hurt your feelings?
Well, the reality is, we had dollars on fishing lines trying to get the hookers close enough for us to throw rocks at. But
right.
The fact that he assumed
that our studio is in a garbage area that has hookers all over the place.
Click live chat. Bunch of people in there right now. We appreciate you guys very, very much being there. Share it with your friends. Share it with your enemies. Share it with the Democrats. We'd love to yell at them for a little bit as well.
Did you mean that with friends or enemies?
Frenemies.
Frenemies.
We do have a ton of talk.
Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials, without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/get started for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, what the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass f- So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Traveling again next week, and it should be the last.
Couple days after the show, and you're like, hey, the whole rock at the hooker thing, kind of funny.
Right.
But before there are people out there starting to form the rock throwing hooker league.
Right.
Let's throw out a couple
as seen on SHR Media. Yeah.
Corporate sponsorship.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and throw this disclaimer out there for everybody. And we're like, okay, Mr. Bernstein.
Yeah. I'll throw a rock at you. You cost more than a hooker.
Wait, not that I'd know. And he said, no, I don't, which was even more awkward.
Yes. Speaking of hookers,
I got so much positive email from that Rocks at Hookers. Just so you know. I thought for sure hate mail was pouring in. Like, I got love mail.
Love mail.
Yeah.
Well, the Hookers Association of America hasn't got to us yet, which is weird.
HAA.
It's actually Hookers of I forget, but it spells hoe. I don't even know where the joke was going with that. It spells hoe.
Hookers of Entertainment.
I'm just going to cut to the quick on that. Hookers of Entertainment versus the ones that are there for non-entertainment.
Right, for sport.
This is strictly for sport.
Hose. Hookers of sport. It's two distinct groups, Sean. You have a hose and you have hoe.
Oh, man. What do we have on the big board of topics today?
I don't know. We have some ISIS speak. We do have the debate block with Dan Butcher.
Yes.
Coming up at 8:30. We are going to discuss some Missouri issues going on, and then we have a little Russia block that we're gonna be discussing.
And of course, the chat room comes through. I love our chat room people. Agador, Hookers Organized for Empowerment. Ho.
Okay.
I'm shocked that's not a real thing yet.
Right.
How have we missed the boat on that?
Or endowment.
Versus endowment.
Right.
Oh, let's get right onto the terror block.
Why? I'm having fun.
I know.
Why would you take my fun away? So, I didn't realize this, but ISIS has, I think they may have like an official weapon.
Yes.
And it's the knife.
Yes. Ranged weapon attacks.
No, I'm like they actually have a weapon now.
Oh,
that's like their thing.
Well, it's kind of aiming low, right?
Right. Like, you thought I was being sarcastic or whatever because of all these knife attacks, but this is my surprise Sean segment. No, ISIS has like an official weapon, and it's a knife. Did you know this?
It amazes me how many levels of suck they have.
Yeah.
Don't they have an AK-47 in their flag?
No, they want the knife. They want the knife.
I want the knife.
They're saying they're calling on Palestinians specifically to take up the knife and to kill. It seems like in Israel they're openly encouraging stabbings. So far, it's killed 12, wounded 167 since October 1st. They're using sermons, social media, blogs, TV, radios, and so forth, and their message has been consistent that anybody can pick up a knife in order to advance their twisted view of Islam. One of the sheiks, quoting here, preached while he has a knife up during one of his speeches or sermons. He says, quote, "Restrain the victim while others attack him with axes and butcher knives." So they seem to have this where they're openly saying, hey, the knife is the way to go. It says, quote, "Do not fear what will be said about you, O men of the West Bank. Next time, attack in a group of 3, 4, or 5. Attack them in groups."
Do they really say, "O men of the West Bank"?
Yes, they do. Wow. That's a direct quote. Cut them into body parts.
Oh.
So here they're talking specifically about using edged weapons. In a completely unrelated story. In Merced, California...
let's see what else we have on here. Oh, wait a minute.
In Merced, California, there was a college student that attacked others. He had a manifesto. He vowed to, quote, "cut someone's head off."
Mm-hmm.
He praised Allah. there was a two-page manifesto that he had. His name was Faisal Mohammed.
Right.
He was 18 years old. But just to be clear, he used a knife. ISIS-related Twitter account praised him for his bravery and his attack.
Right.
I think a couple weeks prior there was a call by ISIS for lone wolf attacks.
Mm-hmm.
He did have a photograph of the ISIS flag,
well, that's
of the jihadist flag. But this was not terror. This was not a terror strike. According to authorities, he was upset because he got kicked out of the study group.
Well, this seems like a perfectly reasonable response to that.
Right. Did I mention that ISIS has like a specific weapon that they were calling on people to use? That may kind of tie the... Oh, this was an unrelated story. I forgot. And you heard about it when it happened. There were witnesses that saying he was smiling. He seemed happy that while he was committing these attacks.
Yeah.
Law enforcement did shoot. They shot and killed him. Which stopped the attack.
Can I talk about the smiling just for a quick second?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times when you see any homicide videos or something like that, usually people are pretty either glazed over or very, very violent in their nature, right? When we see the CCTV cameras or whatever you get now of incidents, the fact that he was smiling as he committed his attack should tell you that he was at peace with what he was doing, which is more frightening. It's just a scary son of a bitch.
You know, and I want to openly mock the Merced County Sheriff, Vern Warnke, or Wonk, or however the heck you pronounce his name.
Wanker.
Yeah. He says that, and I'm quoting here. He was talking about this. So there was an 8-inch hunting knife that he utilized. The sheriff said there was a gruesome statement he made about wanting to cut someone's head off. Okay. But he says that there's no evidence that Muhammad is tied to a terror group, or that he was inspired by terrorists. And here's a quote from Sheriff Warnke, so I always mispronounce that. He says, quote, "There was nothing to indicate he was doing this because of Allah, or because he was going to be rewarded with 72 virgins, or because of ties to a terror group. He appeared to be a devout Muslim on the strong side of the belief." Hang on a second.
I'm sorry, but how does he
hang on a second.
There and let that bullshit spew from his mouth?
So he's a devout Muslim, okay. On the strong side of his belief, okay. He had a picture of an ISIS flag in his possession, talked about beheading, was praised by an ISIS-related Twitter account, and made references to praise Allah while he was attacking.
Well, he's on the stronger side of the belief.
What do you mean there's freaking nothing there? I just pointed out a few things that are there. Maybe you want to look into it, you jackass.
I equate this to like the fire department showing up to a building that's fully engulfed with flames, and they're like, we can smell something burning. We see the smoke pouring out of the roof. We haven't gone inside, but we're pretty sure there's no fire there. Now, the building is in a strong belief that it's burning.
Somebody inside
has a very strong belief that they're on fire.
Right, and they brought out some burned material and pages.
Right.
But
we still don't think it's really a fire.
We really don't think that it's a fire.
Oh, man.
But see, the fire department would do that because they're fire department folks.
Right.
This guy's a cop. Like, I expect better from him.
But the reality is, look at it.
But he's not a cop.
You go down to Merced and you go down to that county. What's the biggest moneymaker in that county? That school, right? The state pays a lot of money to,
I was going to say agriculture and illegal immigration.
Well, illegal immigration is number 2. But that school generates a lot of revenue for an otherwise not revenue-generating county. You know what I mean? So just the residents being there, what they spend off campus, et cetera, et cetera. We know the UC system is completely leftist. It is complete.
This is the sheriff that said it, though. Not even the chief of some UC police department.
The chief of the UC police department was actually much better spoken about all this. But But there's the political pressure. That's what this is. Well, listen, we all know what it is, but we can't say it because other Muslims may get offended.
Right.
What about the people who he was trying to murder being offended?
Right.
What about the truth and the situation that came out? Why isn't the story being told as it is? Because political jackassery and leftism.
Look, all I know is I am so happy the governor signed that bill that restricts CCW holders and retired law enforcement from carrying guns on school campuses, including the UC system. I am so happy because these type of attacks would never happen again there twice.
When are we going to ban knives? When is it going to happen? I talked about this last week when I talked about the UC Merced incident and it first happened. When's the knife ban coming?
Yeah. Well, you can't tell me in this day and age that we can't cut our meat, our steaks by other means.
Sporks.
Right. You can't tell me that, really. Look, I know there's lightsabers.
I would love that.
Right?
I would love to have a lightsaber.
Cut your meat some other way, or make it so tender that you can cut it with a spork.
Right, crime rib.
Right.
Everybody eats prime rib, and you won't need a knife.
You know what? Because it takes fossil fuels to manufacture utensils, and sporks are plastic.
It's a green issue.
We need to eat with our fingers now.
Oh, on a floor too.
Yes, we have.
Cool.
Listen, we have teeth that we can chew and bite meat. We have no need for forks. They didn't exist when we were cave persons.
Right. Cave persons? We were Cro-Magnon peoples.
So, I think this is a good movement. Look, this is a movement I can get behind.
Right, and I think they...
Take the weapon away. Look, if there were no more knives, ISIS wouldn't have any weapons, and we would single-handedly defeat them through disarmament.
Well, it's just like...
You're onto something.
It's just like Feinstein said, right?
Right.
Once the person with the gun realizes everybody else has put their guns down, they will in turn put theirs down. That's how it works.
Right, yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, because I'm sure every other student at the Merced campus that this individual attacked with a knife, I'm sure they had not...
Oh, right. Right.
Well, that blows that theory out of the water.
Way out of the water.
Yeah, way out of the water. You know, I wonder if he did it because he thought that other people were armed, and so it was self-defense.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so he thought...
It was a preemptive self-defense.
Right, the day before he gets kicked out of the study group, and then that day, as soon as he walked in, they were going to attack and kill him.
Right, and so he had to...
I'm waiting for some lawyer to use that.
They can't, he's dead.
No, not in this particular case, but in other type of instances.
I hope he didn't get his 72 virgins.
Oh, no, he definitely didn't.
I hope he was one.
Have you seen the kid? Yeah, I was going to say, 71 more. What
if he's one of the 72 virgins that some other jihadist gets?
Some other dude gets, right?
What is this?
Oh, I immediately regret all the decisions I've made. This is bullshit. He doesn't even look good in a dress. I mean, what the hell, man? I'd go back and do it all again. I'd definitely not do this. This is all bad, man. He's heavier than me. But I'm a virgin. Yeah, no. Get out. Oh, where's damnation when you need it?
Have you seen that? Speaking of damnation, do you remember the Twilight Zone where the guy gets the girls and the gambling and he always wins?
Yes.
And it turns out that was hell?
Right.
Because he always got everything he wanted?
Well, hell's not always a bad place, right? Everything's in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? I mean, what if you like really hot places? Like you're one of those people that vacations on the equator in August.
Right.
You know, the hell may not be all that bad for you. Somebody like me would be truly hell because I'm fat, but, you know. That was a great episode.
What if hell was your worst ex, and that's who you had to live with forever?
Okay, what if hell, and hear me out on this.
Okay.
What if hell was a certain president in a White House destroying our nation single-handedly, and half the people around you or more are too stupid to realize it and follow it like lemmings. Other quick question. Were we in a car accident at all 7.5 years ago?
I'm trying to think, and I'm thinking about this.
Because I feel...
Because we might not know we're dead.
Ooh. Well,
is this like a whole Sixth Sense thing?
Right.
Where like everybody else we talk to is really dead? Is Yoda in backpack? We need to do some research.
Right. Or are we between? Are we actually between? Right.
I don't know. And what if like our internet here in hell doesn't allow us to research their death, so we think everybody is actually alive? Which means our actions have no consequence.
Well, see, I'm going to take this knife.
I'm going to test this theory.
I was talking about that someone the other day. I said, you know, it was funny you brought that up. I was like, what if I am in hell? And everything that's going on around us with the Democrats and everything, what if this is it and it's never going to end?
Right, ever.
And it just keeps going.
Look, I wasn't going to say anything to you.
Every 8 years like Groundhog Day.
I've known you for several years now, and I wasn't going to say anything, but you don't look like you're aging at all.
I wish that was true. I so wish that was true.
We're up against a break.
We are up against a break. When we come back, the absolutely amazing, astonishing, good-looking, outstandingly intelligent I will return along with Clint and Dan Butcher, the editor-in-chief.
and just a disclaimer, because we got another note from our lawyers. Even though we were talking about ISIS and knives and killing in Merced, the last name Butcher is in fact his last name and not any kind of comedic reference to some untold tragedy.
All that and more here on the Sackheads Radio Show, live on the SHR Media Network.
In a world controlled by corrupt politics.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on The Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border and says coordination, we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to The Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. the Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
The truth is not always pleasant. He is, however, always the unpleasant blind guy. Good evening, and welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. On the phone with us right now, and when I say right now, I mean right now, is a man who needs no introduction, is a man who, quite honestly, doesn't deserve the praise that I give him. It's a dear friend of our show. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Butcher, editor-in-chief of Pundit Press, joins us now on the Sackheads Radio Show. Dan, my friend, good evening, sir.
Oh, good evening, gentlemen. It is very good to talk with you this evening. I know not who this Dan Butcher you are speaking of, but my name is Abdullah the Butcher, and I was asked to call into this very fine program this evening.
And tell us about your knives, Abdullah.
That sounded almost like an Irish. That sounded like an Irish jihadist. I don't know what that was.
Irish jihadist. That's about right. hey, you know what, guys? I got to comment on something. I want to just double check and make sure that I saw this in the chat room. I popped into the chat room earlier, and it was kind of towards the end of Jersey Joe show, and Dave had put up a post in the chat room, and I swear he said, where are the sighted women at? And so, anyway, I thought...
Which is kind of funny considering his visual impairment, right? So it's kind of twofold.
Exactly, and here's the other thing, guys. You were talking about Islamic terrorists and hell. What about all these transvestite ISIS members? All these members of ISIS that are dressing up as women to try to escape and not be a part of ISIS anymore. What kind of hell is waiting for those guys?
They're the virgins.
Here in the United States, Barack Obama would welcome transvestite Islamic terrorists.
Well, that's true progression.
At all.
Hey, and speaking of women and transvestites, some broad jumped out of an airplane and made the news. Oh, look, a woman jumped out of an airplane and parachuted, carrying on a family tradition. Awesome. Why is that news? Man jumps out of an airplane, nothing. Broad does it, freaking national news.
It's the war against men continues.
How
degrading is that? A woman does something people have been doing for, a long time, and it's like a huge deal. How degrading is that?
And she wasn't even the first one to do it.
Exactly. Big time degrading, right? Woman drives a car and doesn't crash. That's a news story.
Please direct all of your comments and complaints to
Hey, Dan, when you emailed that to me, you didn't think I'd say it, did you?
No, not at all. Oh, great! I'm gonna have the nags. After.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say
Association of Gals.
National Association of Gals. Let's get serious for a moment.
Why? I'm having fun.
No.
Never.
This is a very serious topic. Let's talk about women in the kitchen now.
Okay, hang on. We're going to play a new game. We're going to play a new game. Hot or necessary?
I want you guys to understand something right now. My wife is in the basement, which is right underneath where I'm at right now.
Don't say anything else, because that's a perfect
I hear
statement.
her coming up the stairs, and it's sounding like Godzilla. And so I'm out of this conversation, guys. Yes, I freely admit I'm scared of my wife.
Well, I'm divorced. I have no idea why. Anyways,
my wife can kick my ass. There's no doubt about it. No.
And rightfully so.
And she's a damn good shot from 100 yards or longer. So
yeah, you better keep your mouth shut. Now, let's talk about the debates a little bit before you get yourself in trouble, or more importantly, we get you in trouble, which is weird that we seem to do that to a lot of people. The Fox Business News debate was last evening. Of course, once again, we had the kids' table and the grown-ups' table. Dan, the kids' table was relatively small.
Chris Christie, that's not small. Come on, Sean. Guy's bigger than you.
What do you mean, relatively small? The only time it was small was when you had the Lindsey Graham there trying to stand up on a booster so he could be seen by the audience. I shouldn't have said that.
No.
But he wasn't even invited to this one, so it doesn't matter.
Right. He wasn't invited, as was Kasich. Not Kasich. Who was the other person left off, Dan?
This is really bad. That tells you something.
Right. That's exactly...
Pataki, former governor of New York, was not invited.
That was it. You know, it's sad when we cover politics, and I can't even remember certain people that are running because they're such a non-factor in all of this.
Well, and you know what? That's a good point to bring up about the kids' table to begin with. And you actually had a fairly good debate in the what we would consider the opening act here. Chris Christie actually did very well.
Listen, when a major league team is playing a single A team, it's going to do well.
Yeah. Well, here was the thing with Christie. You know, a lot of people thought, Christie being demoted down to the kids' table might, take a little bit off of him, but he did very well, especially when Bobby Jindal went on the attack.
Yes,
and he was questioned afterwards why he did, and he said, you know what, a lot of these guys over here are moderate Republicans, and we need to elect a conservative, and that's why I went after them. I was trying to expose them as being moderate Republicans when I feel we need to have a conservative elected. So I thought he handled that question very well. Chris Christie did very well because he directed most of his attacks towards Hillary Clinton, which played very well to the audience. Why Santorum? Now Santorum did have some very good remarks about dealing with the VA system and such as that. But why Huckabee, Santorum are still in this is beyond me. Huckabee's got a few more books to sell. Santorum wants to get some more fees on speaking tours and stuff like that. Pataki, Lindsey Graham, these guys, it's time for them to go. It's time for them to go away. I still think that Bobby Jindal and Chris Christie have a little bit more to offer, but at least then we could narrow it down to where we've got them all on the same stage.
Yeah.
Coming up to the main event. There was some really good exchanges during the main debate, especially between Rubio and Rand Paul. There were some real good exchanges there. Ted Cruz was involved in some of those as well. And what those exchanges show, a lot of people, what it showed was how deep the Republican bench really is, and this is what this debate did. It really showcased a lot of the ideas and plans that the candidates had. It really showed how deep the bench really is versus anything that the socialists / Democrats / progressives have to offer right now. So that was a good thing. Now, the bad thing was, why in the hell is John Kasich running as a Republican for president? He should be running. He should be running as a Democrat. He should be running and going up against Hillary and Bernie. Because especially when he came out and a lot of the stuff he had to say on economic issues, a lot of the stuff he had to say in dealing with immigration reform, he really sounded like, he didn't even sound like a moderate Republican. He sounded like a hardcore Democrat. So he last night, in the limited amount of time that he had, other than when he was interrupting, John Kasich completely destroyed his presidential campaign. If he's going to continue running as a Republican, now if he decides to run as a Democrat, he might actually have a chance there.
And I agree with you on that. He did sound like I was going to say a complete progressive, but kind of along those same lines. He should be running against Hillary, like he indicated. Bernie Sanders, an avowed socialist, why is he on the Democratic ticket? He's not a Democrat. Last I checked, he's an independent, and he says he's a socialist. Why is he involved in the Democratic primary?
Well, because they're trying to get those two portions to be more mainstream and merge them together.
Yeah, you have to remember, and the Democratic Party at this. Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. In the Democrat Party right now, let's look at how the membership is made up in the House and the Senate with the Democrats that are elected on a national level. There is a very distinct reason why the Democrats are suffering massive losses on the local and state level. The Republicans now control 70. Now, they either control or have partial control of 75% of the state legislatures across the country. There's a reason for that, and the reason for that is, in most of America, what we would call, let's call normal America, they still identify as being conservative or kind of right in the center. But what's happened to the Democrat Party? The Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party of Kennedy. It's not the Democrat Party even of FDR. This is the Democrat Party of socialism. There's no difference between a progressive, a Democrat, a liberal, whatever. There's no difference at all, and that is why you are seeing Hillary Clinton. And I've always and I continue to preach this, that Hillary Clinton is even more dangerous than Barack Obama, but for the mere fact that while Barack Obama, he studied Saul Alinsky. Hillary Clinton is a disciple and a student. She works side by side with Saul Alinsky and such. And then when you have the likes of the Cruz brothers, of the Castro brothers, Julian Castro in particular, who will be the vice presidential candidate. Don't look. I know people are throwing around that Elizabeth Warren might be. It will be Julian Castro. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Who the vice presidential candidate will be on the socialist/Democrat side of things. But Kasich last night, boy, he really took that hard turn left. Jeb Bush did the same thing. When it came to talking about immigration reform, Jeb Bush really took a hard left turn. Now, Jeb Bush was the one candidate. Jeb Bush, I think, has probably reinvented his campaign more than Hillary Clinton has now. So we were supposed to see a new, tougher Jeb Bush last night, a new Jeb Bush who was serious about being running for president. Jeb Bush tried to interrupt a few times like Kasich did, but he just didn't have it in him. And then when he started talking about his ideas for immigration reform, a lot of his ideas about dealing with the economy, he really shot himself in the foot. I mean, he's an amnesty-loving rhino. There's no doubt about it. And Ted Cruz had probably one of the best lines of the night when he said, if Republicans join Democrats as the party of amnesty, we will lose. Well, I'll tell you right now, Jeb Bush and John Kasich, their campaigns, any hope that they had of becoming president of the United States on the Republican side of things ended last night with this debate.
I don't think John Kasich took a turn to the left. I think his true colors showed. He's right. You look at he is a progressive. There's no doubt about it. And I think he tried to make himself be a little bit more conservative. And last night, it just his true colors showed. I don't think Bush did a lot of harm for himself last night. I sure as heck don't think he helped himself any. But I think his campaign is going to kind of limp along because of that. Same with Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't really make a huge splash for me.
Not at all.
He was more mellow. He conducted himself more like a statesman, I guess. But he was definitely more mellowed out. I want to talk about Carly Fiorina because I thought she had a pretty good night.
Yes.
She had a serious tone. She calls the issues out when she says she didn't really engage Trump at all, and she seems to be pretty adept at talking on the issues.
Yeah, Carly, actually, I thought she had a very good night because she has a really good grasp, and she's very well, and particularly this particular debate really was an opportunity for Ted Cruz, for Marco Rubio, and Carly Fiorina to really shine because they do have a real good, strong grasp of the issues. With Donald Trump, he kind of sputtered along a little bit last night. He didn't hurt himself, but he certainly didn't help himself. And Donald Trump had a grasp of a few things, but then on other issues, you could tell that he was just kind of talking off the top of his head. Is the way it looked like. Versus when you got into a more now, let's face it. When you're dealing with debates like this, these debates are set up so you can kind of get an idea of where the candidates stand. They're not meant to go real in depth into the issues. That's not the purpose of this. If you're electing somebody off of a debate, then you need to really take a look at why you're actually voting, because you can get a real grasp of these folks and what their policies are. That's just the nice thing about the Republicans versus the Democrats. All of these folks have put up their tax plans up on their websites. They put their economic plans, their health plans. Everything's up there for you to see, and they're very well versed in this. And especially, like you said, Carly Fiorina really. I think she's at this point really positioning herself more for a vice presidential position on the ticket, but she would certainly be a great asset to a GOP ticket. I want to talk about Dr. Ben Carson for a moment. I thought Dr. Carson did he did not hurt himself last night because this was what was funny. This was supposed to be a debate centered around economics, but then, of course, it took a turn towards Dr. Carson's biography, took a turn towards foreign policy, etc. But Dr. Carson really handled the questions about his biography very well. I thought the line that he used, talking about why is Hillary Clinton not being vetted as well as him, he really played that well, and the audience really accepted it, and I think the viewers accepted it as well, as did his hardcore supporters. So that I think that will keep Carson from slipping in the polls any. But bottom line, when it came down to it, the big winners last night in this debate. Number one, Chris Christie on the kids' table did very well. Ted Cruz, I think, did very well, especially when he got to talking about immigration reform. We did have a few slip-ups on numbers and stuff like that, but overall did very well. Marco Rubio shined last night, as to be expected in a debate like this. And like you said, Clint, Carly Fiorina really stood out as well. She definitely stood out more over Carson and Trump than I thought she would.
Yeah, I think she did. Overall, I think Marco Rubio had a hell of a night.
Yes, he did.
I really do. I mean, he was, and that little back and forth with him and Senator Rand Paul over defense spending.
Oh yeah, yes.
Oh yes,
yeah,
yes, he did. Well, here's what happened in that exchange.
And I'll tell you real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt you real quick, Dan, but I like the fact that Rand Paul came out and I heard some pundits talking about, well, he's anti-military, and I don't think that's the case. I think he is anti going into a deficit or going into debt in order to pay for an expanded military. And I'm not saying I agree with that point of view, but I'm saying I think that's the corner from which he was arguing from, and he made a valid point, and so did Marco Rubio, and that's why I thought I really enjoyed that exchange, because they both had valid points of view that I could identify with. Sean?
Well, and it's one of those things, too. For him, it's twofold. Not only does it make him look good to the anti-deficit people and the financial hawks, but to his young libertarians who are very anti-war and very come home, it kind of bolsters that stance as well, without actually having to say, hey, I want to shrink down and bring us home, and kind of cut himself away from the larger conservative herd who would prefer to have a stronger military. So, that worked for his base twofold.
Now, here's the problem with the whole situation with Rand Paul. Is when the debate was over, Rand Paul made the comment, I was the most conservative candidate on the stage last night. And he can actually make that argument. But here's the problem. With the way he presented his argument, he still has the shadow of his father, Ron Paul, hanging over him. And so immediately when he got into this exchange with Marco Rubio, and they were both making their points, and I made the point to start out with, I thought these exchanges were very well. It showed how deep the bench really is, because they both made very valid points. But at the end of the exchange, Marco Rubio got the upper hand, and when he got the upper hand in exchange with Rand Paul, immediately the comparisons began on social media between Ron Paul and Rand Paul. Now, Rand Paul is far from being an isolationist. Now, his father is.
Right.
Rand Paul is the furthest thing from that. But at the end of the night, at the end of this exchange, that is how he was portrayed. He was not, even though Rand Paul makes the comment, because of the way I want to be a fiscal hawk on these type of things, if we're going to go to war, we better have a damn good plan and a way to pay for it. It's his mentality. But at the end of the day, because of the way his arguments come off sometimes, the comparisons to his father are very, very damaging. They're very damning to any chance he has of being the nominee. And if he has any chances of going further in this presidential election, he's going to have to find a way to separate himself from his father, to get from underneath that shadow. If not, it's going to haunt him all the way through it. That is the one thing that's going to really destroy Rand Paul's campaign, is his very own father. So, once again, those exchanges were great. It showed how the great ideas that everybody has. And I think this, when you compare it to the debacle that we had with the last debate, and the way the people came out and were saying, this debate was boring. It was da-da-da-da. Well, you know what? The moderators didn't go in trying to entice a fight. They came in, they had their questions, specific questions for each candidate. They did take a few from the web, from emails and such. But here was the thing. If there were going to be any exchanges between the candidates, like you saw between Kasich and Trump, between Trump and Bush, between Cruz and Kasich, etc., they let those happen naturally. They let the way a debate should go, and they let those flow very well. And when they did that, you had some differences of opinions, but you certainly had a great exchange between the candidates so they could showcase their ideas. And I thought that really, really strengthened the GOP field last night.
I absolutely agree with you. It's one of those things too. Politics is supposed to be boring in a way. Everyone who says, the debate was boring, but it's supposed to be boring, right? It's not supposed to have flair. It's not supposed to be, for lack of a better term, a shit show. It's supposed to be...
Not supposed to be a tchotchkes?
Exactly.
You have to wear so much flair.
19 pieces of flair. It's supposed to be nuts and bolts. It's supposed to be... all that stuff. And it drives me crazy when people are like, well, he's just not an interesting person, or blah, 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 blah. I don't care if he's an interesting person or not. It's how his brain works is what we should be considering. And if it's boring but he's intelligent, then we should have that conversation.
Here's the picture I just got. That the candidate is like the orange monster from Looney Tunes. And the American public is like Bugs Bunny being the hairdresser, right? It's such an interesting candidate with such interesting hair. That's the picture.
Monsters are just the most interesting people.
Well, guys, let me point this out real quick. If you compare this debate, which had a lot of substance to it, you really got to know a lot about these candidates last night. Certainly a lot more than you had gotten to know about them in the previous debates combined. Now, if you compare this to the last Democrat forum that was held, that was moderated, quote unquote, by Rachel Maddow, when she literally had all of the questions pre-fed to her by Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That was a complete fiasco. That debate, I mean, you could not tell the difference. You literally could not tell the difference between the actual forum and the skit that Saturday Night Live did. Saturday Night Live absolutely destroyed the Democrats with the skit they did on it, because it was so accurate and so to the point. It was hard to tell the difference between the two because the questions that were asked were absolutely that ridiculous.
Yeah. No, and listen, I think anyone, and we've talked about this before, you're going to have those lemming Democrat voters, just like you have lemming Republican voters.
Right.
I'll be the first one to admit it. And that's why watching these debates should be important, because you should actually get to know just some of their ideas about each candidate. It lets you know just who they are a little bit, and then you should continue to research on your own. But you know as well as I do, 80%, 85% of this country is not going to do that. They are going to look at these debates as their decision makers, and the candidates know that. We've seen it more and more, especially with the Obama campaign twice, and you know, Vice President Biden as well, when he was going up against Paul Ryan the last debate in the last election. The shock value is what some of them go for, especially on the left. I mean, Bernie Sanders is a prime example. The things Bernie Sanders says, the things that he just rants about and all this other stuff, that's what gets the sound clips. You know, and Larry David as Bernie Sanders on SNL nailed it, but sadly the reality is he also nailed it. And that's all Bernie Sanders is a talking point and, you know, a guy who has one pair of underwear.
And
that's an unconfirmed report.
Sean, here's the important thing to finish up your point, is that going forward, I think the debate last night has set the standard for what the Republicans would like to see in their debates. So definitely the RNC needs to press the networks going forward that we want to see debates of substance. Now, is that going to happen? That's wait to be seen, because definitely the networks are going to want ratings, and of course, if they manage to entice a fight between Donald Trump and somebody else, well, that's going to get a lot of sound bites. It's going to get a lot of ratings versus actually focusing on the substance, getting down to the issues. Letting the candidates be able to put their ideas and thoughts out there to be able to distinguish themselves from the other candidates, etc. So the RNC's got a very uphill battle with this to ensure that this continues forward, because if they don't, you're absolutely right. It can turn into an absolute debacle for the Republicans, and let's face it, guys, the Democrats are absolute masters. You know, we poke a lot of fun at Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and such, but the Democrats, especially the Clinton election machine, are very, very formidable when it comes to taking this and using it to their advantage. And if you think that they don't already have the sound bites lit up on whoever they're going to run against, they do. and they're watching these debates going forward. And every time there's a big skirmish, or they ask Donald Trump, Donald, who do you hate the most on the stage tonight?
Right.
As the opening question of a debate,
Hey, Donald.
Stuff like that.
Donald, if you were going to punch anyone in the face tonight, who would it be?
And how hard?
And how hard? We're up against
Rosie.
Yeah. We're up against a break. We come back. We want to talk about everything that's going on in the University of Missouri, the resignation, you name it. We're going to talk about it. All that and more with the amazing Dan Butcher, editor-in-chief of Pundit Press, right here on the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Jersey Joe from Reefer of Common Sense, and we have moved to a new night and time. Every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on shrmedia.com, you will catch the Reefer of Common Sense uncensored, unfiltered, and only on shrmedia.com.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid promo.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
If our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border to coordination, we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to the Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show, proud sponsors of the 2016 Rock a Hooker campaign. On the phone with us right now is the amazing Dan Butcher, host of News and Commentary with Dan Butcher right here on SHR Media and editor-in-chief of Pundit Press. Dan, so nothing really happened in Missouri this week. It's kind of quiet.
Real quiet.
Which is nice because really it's one of those things that Missouri needed a break after everything that happened in Ferguson and whatnot. So
Oh, yeah. Nothing's happened in Missouri at all over the last couple of years. I've been nice and quiet.
Yes.
You know what, guys? It's a complete and utter fiasco what is taking place there. You're talking about you've had the chancellor of the university system step down. You've had the president of the university step down over some alleged incidences that there's no proof of. That is the bottom line here. This is all you're talking about. You had a young man that went on a hunger strike, talking about how oppressed he was, and we come to find out that this particular young man that was oppressed, his family's actually worth $20 million. His father is a railroad official. He's a executive with a railroad company. So here we have this kid, saying he's oppressed because he's African American and da-da-da-da-da, but find out he's one of the wealthiest students at the school. Then you have the student body president, who's really the one that kind of kicked all of this off, because he made the allegation, number one, that while he was walking one night that somebody hurled some racial slurs at him. And this is the same kid that later on made a false claim, claiming that the Ku Klux Klan was on the campus, that they were threatening to kill people, and that he was working with the National Guard, the FBI, da-da-da-da-da. Well, come to find out, that was a complete hoax. Wow. And he later issued an apology to this. This particular kid also happens to be a big activist in the Black Lives Matters movement. So you kind of see where all of this is going, guys.
Well, and as soon as somebody comes out and saying they're working with the National Guard, the FBI, the CIA, and I automatically think Moonbat right away, because if you're truly doing that, you're not talking about it. Listen, it's one of those things. I understand to a point why the alleged terms would offend people, or the alleged statements. I had no problem whether you could prove or disprove that the statements were actually made. I had no problem with the football team saying, hey, you know what, we're going to sit out. That's their choice. They can do that. They have that right to protest if they feel that they're being wronged. The fact that all of this, however, yet again, is based on a lot of assumptions and then continued to be exaggerated through lies, metaphors, and half-truths is the sad part. Innuendo is the sad part. But what's even more sad is the fact that how many people will just jump on the race bus and not even look to see who's driving and whether or not they have a license to do so.
And not race bus in terms of an actual race. That was a metaphor for ethnicity.
Thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome.
Guys, let me tell you, this is a very telling, because we had the journalism professor that made a big stink and it stood up to the student,
Peppermint Patty with glasses,
reporters, exactly. And of course, she's been relieved. Yeah, she's been forced to step down from some of her duties. She's still a professor at the university. She issued an apology. But here's a very telling statement. The vice president of the university, and the young lady's name right now eludes me off the top of my head, but basically she was giving an interview, and she said she was tired of people using the First Amendment to create an unsafe environment. The basic gist that she was trying to give during this interview was that we need to have safe spaces. Here's kind of the oxymoron on this. We need to have safe spaces on the campus where the students can come together and feel safe so that they can discuss their ideas. I thought that's what the First Amendment was all about, to be able to assemble, to be able to speak your mind, and to be able to have your ideas heard. That is the First Amendment. But yet these folks right here, they would with the attitude that they have, they would actually like to silence the First Amendment. They're not looking for a safe haven. They're not looking for students or people to be able to spread their ideas. What they're looking for is a way to control the ideas, to control the narrative, to control the thought process. And folks, that's very dangerous, and we're seeing that a lot on our college campuses. You know,
from the left,
there was a time. Yeah, you know, there was a time that college administrators and professors, you know, they were generally kind, fair, supportive, and of freedom of speech, assembly, and truly believed in American exceptionalism. But too many of those folks have been replaced by the products of the 1960s. They're intolerant, they're leftist, they're entitled, and they're self-centered. And these are the folks teaching the students at these universities, not only the minority students, but the white students. And these students largely reflect and magnify these qualities and these ideas that, let's face it, that are being indoctrinated into their heads.
Well, Dan, this goes back to when Obama was pretty early in office, and they passed that for safety, the no protesting within 100 feet of the president. And we said on this show, and a lot of other people said it as well, that's just so there were no negative signs ever behind him and nobody shouted out and dared interrupt him. It had nothing to do with his safety. Nothing changed over the time. So it started really with that, and then you start the leftist decisions. I go back to the rancher's name in Nevada. Bundy, the Bundy Ranch, when they started the free speech zone and all this other stuff, and we've seen that in other places as well, right? And eventually people come out and say, everywhere's a free speech zone. You have the right to protest wherever you want. And it's amazing how they have no problem trying to put conservative or liberty values into a free speech zone. However, their values, they need to be everywhere because they're oppressed otherwise.
Well, you know, and it's even going to go further than that, because eventually what you're going to see, and you guys are already starting to see this in California. You guys are starting to see this in California, where they're starting to replace the traditional grading system in the public schools so as not to, quote unquote, we don't want to discourage the students. We don't want to seem discriminatory against the students. We want to, they're doing this to what they're saying to encourage the students, but what's going to end up happening is the students are going to take advantage of it. Kids are very quick to learn. They're going to take advantage of this, and they're going to learn that, hey, you know what? I don't have to even show up to school. I don't have to do a damn thing, and I'm going to pass. I'm going to get a high school diploma without ever actually having to open up a book or look at a computer or do anything. And now you're going to start to see that. And you can quote me on this. You're going to see this happening. You've already have students today at the University of Missouri campus refusing to go to classes because, quote unquote, we don't feel safe. Well, the next thing that will happen is, oh, you know what? Professor so-and-so, I think you were being discriminatory against me because you gave me a C on this report. You know what? You gave me a failing grade on this test. I think you were being discriminatory against me. You're a racist for failing me in this class. Those are the type of things you're going to start to see manifest. And then you're going to start seeing such things as, oh, you know what? I've got $50,000 in student loans. You know what? I think it's racist that you allowed me to do this. Why should I have to pay this back now? Aren't I entitled to a free college education? That's the next step in this, guys, that you're going to start to see. This is it. They'll claim that this is about racism, but in the end, it's all about entitlement. What do I deserve? What can I get out of this?
And you're already hearing this in some of the platforms, right? I mean, how many platforms have you heard on the left side where they say, college education for all, free college,
free healthcare,
free free
Obama phones,
and that's they're buying votes through free stuff. It's literally like giving away free stuff in a store. They're buying your vote. And speaking of Obamacare, and I've mentioned before, I have somebody who's very close to me who's a healthcare attorney in Massachusetts, and he told me that this past year, couple months, Massachusetts screwed up with Obamacare again.
Shocking.
Well, and this is the rub. Is it really a screw up? 280,000 people were left on benefits for the last 8 months, despite not demonstrating any eligibility for Obamacare and not having any sort of income checked. 280,000 people. Guess who those 280,000 people are probably going to vote for coming around the next election?
Rubio.
Yeah. But the other thing too is they're going to repeal the Cadillac tax, if you will, on Cadillac healthcare plans, and then the funding for the states that do the exchange themselves will now, that was supposed to fund 90% of it or match 90% of it. So now you're going to have that huge gap. It's going to implode, and you're going to get to a single-payer system. True socialism, once again, truly free for those who don't want to pay for it, while everybody else will have to.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, you see that left, it's that nudge over, it's that push over. They know exactly what they want.
And, Sean, you don't see Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, or anybody on the left running away from that anymore. They used to mask this. They actually embrace that we need a single-payer system. Healthcare is a right. It's not a privilege. It's a right. That is their argument. And then, of course, that manifests into college education is a right. It's not a privilege. So free college for all. So all of a sudden you start hearing free everything. Free everything. Everything is a right. It's not a privilege. You don't have to earn nothing. It's a right. You should have this. You should be guaranteed this. And that comes back to everything. When you start to see whether you're discussing the racism narrative, now granted, you see people such as Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and I will say Barack Obama as well, are very, very much capitalistic when it comes to making a buck off of racism.
Oh yeah.
But when you hear them talking about racism, when you start hearing them talk about global warming, when you start hearing about wealth redistribution, always follow the money, because it all comes back to follow the money. It all comes back to entitlements, guarantees for everybody. And the bottom line is, the more crap that they can guarantee for their voting base, the hopes that they have of maintaining power or regaining power. And, thankfully, that narrative is not playing out very well on the state level, as I mentioned before, with the Republicans controlling or having partial control of 75% of the state legislatures. A lot of the people have woken up to this nonsense and said, hey, wait a minute, we got to put the brakes on this. But nationally, where once again you have, the national politics are controlled by not even states, but large urban population centers, whether it be New York City, whether it be Los Angeles, etc., those narratives play into these liberal progressive strongholds where they have such a strong base and are able to control the electoral college, able to carry those particular states in the electoral process. If they continue promising all this free stuff and can guarantee it's a right, it's a right, it's a right, you don't have to work for this, you should be guaranteed this.
Another facet of that is those things not only guarantee their political power through votes, but it also guarantees the power of the government over the people.
Bingo.
Yes.
Because you now have not just a voting block, but you now have the government in control of really all aspects of life. So the government's paying for college. You know what? We think we're paying for your college because it's a right, but we think you need to study engineering. We think you need to study...
We'll pay for it if you do this.
Yes. So we're going to tell you what your major is, and that's the field that you're going to go into based upon your test scores, because we've been keeping track of you through Common Core and all your national standardized tests and so forth. We've been keeping track, so we think that you're best suited for this.
Yeah, and Gus, when it comes down to it, what is the ultimate goal? What is the ultimate thing that the progressive movement looks to accomplish? What is it? It's the same thing. That's why you can lump progressivism, communism, Marxism, socialism, being a Democrat today, all in one big lump, all in one big. There's no separating. The ultimate goal is centralized control over everything. Centralized control over your life, your education, your health care, your money, your jobs, everything. That's the ultimate utopia dream of every progressive, socialist, communist, Marxist out there, is centralized control over every aspect of your life. You know what? We know better than you do on what to do for your life. We know better. We know how to raise your children better than you do. We know how to educate your children better than you do. We know we know what's good for you as far as your health care. We should be able to tell you what to eat. You're already seeing that with Michelle Obama's healthy food initiative in the public schools that is actually costing millions of dollars per day in wasted food because the kids won't eat the crap, won't eat the cardboard. But once again, that's the whole idea behind this, is centralized control of every aspect of your life, guys. And once again, that's not a conspiracy theory. We have seen it over and over again in history that this has been attempted. And so it's something we need to be very mindful, as we're vetting our candidates on the right versus all of the candidates on the left. We need to be very mindful of the ultimate goal and how important the 2016 presidential election really is. Do you want a Marxist, a communist, a socialist as the next president of the United States? Or do you want a capitalist that believes in free markets, that believes in actual freedom, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom to live your life as you see fit? That's basically what it boils down to, guys.
And you could trace a lot of this progressiveness really back to Woodrow Wilson, where along the education lines, he talked about making the young gentlemen of the rising generation as unlike their fathers as possible. And you do that through education. You do that through education to get that fundamental shift in American thought. It's accepted that this is an entitlement, this is your right, as opposed to, no, you have to work hard, you have to earn it, it's not a right, this is something you have to earn, it's a privilege. And so you could trace it all the way back to, like I said, Woodrow Wilson, and we're starting to see a lot of that come into fruition today, particularly in the public school system and the university systems.
Well, and when you look at the left, we know that their plan, it's not a short-term, hey, we're going to show up and start socialism tomorrow, right? It's a 100-year plan, and it's been slowly nicked away, little by little, for 100 years. And now we're starting to see the fruit of the labor, if you will. We're a step away from a single-player system and socialized medicine, free college education, and the government's going to now essentially control your education from kindergarten right through college. Listen, they've already taken over all the journalism outlets. They've taken over most of the journalism schools, right? Look at Click. Look at the girl out of North Texas. All these other things. What you can and can't eat. Listen, they're telling restaurants what their fat content is allowed. You have cities like New York with the soda tax and this, that, and the other thing. They've pushed you away from free decisions through taxation. And
like tobacco.
Like tobacco and alcohol and all the other fun stuff that I like to do. I get taxed more, which I'm okay if we were in a luxury sales tax system, but the fact that I pay my taxes on top of it and then certain things are allowed to be taxed to no end is ridiculous. So their 100-year plan is really starting to come together, and sadly, if you say that in open forum, people call you a lunatic and a conspiracy theorist. Go put on your aluminum hat. By the way, I have two. Blah, 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 because the reality of it, and I think when you sit and you explain to people all these different things, and it doesn't matter if they're if they're an old school Democrat or not, and even some people who are quote unquote progressives, when you start to really break it down and explain it all to them, it scares them. Because then all of a sudden the reality, you can see the reality almost hitting them over the head of, holy crap, they are going this way, and I'm starting to lock in step with it.
Exactly, and that comes back to, brings us back around full circle to, all this craziness that's taking over our college campuses. What you're starting to see come to, what you saw happen at Yale University, and now what you're seeing where the students actually stood up to stop a free speech event, and now you're seeing all the nonsense that's taking place at the University of Missouri as well. That there's a reason why that Hillary Clinton is very popular with the young people. There's a reason why Bernie Sanders draws the same types of crowds that Donald Trump does. That Bernie Sanders is doing it on college campuses with the young. But on the flip side of that, there is one good thing about having the likes of Donald Trump and Dr. Ben Carson in this election, because people are fed up with the career candidates. They're fed up with some of this, and like I was talking to you before, a lot of folks on the state level have wisened up to this and said, "Ooh, let's put the brakes on this." So on the flip side, it's also very heartening and very positive that a lot of the young people are flocking to Donald Trump. A lot of the young people are flocking to Dr. Ben Carson because they are seeing particularly these two candidates. And you could probably say the same thing for Rubio and Ted Cruz as well. But they're seeing these as the alternatives to Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. They're starting to say, "Hey, you know what? We're seeing, somebody's got to pay for this. Somebody's got to pay for all of this free stuff." And so the smart ones that are realizing, hey, I'm going to have to pay for all of this, you're starting to see them grasp the Republican message, the conservative message. You're seeing a youth movement in the Republican Party with the conservative movement. Here on our local university, we actually have the president of two of the universities that in my immediate area are both young Republicans. So it's very encouraging to see that type of thing taking place on college campuses. But once again, it all comes back to those of us, that are parents. Where are the parents of these kids? I think they're lock and step with them. They're saying, "Hey, what can I get for free? What will you owe me for something? Society owes me this. I should get this for free." Right. So somehow you've got to be able to get through to a few of these, but you've also got to encourage the other students that are thinking, "Hey, something's not quite right. There's something amiss here." We've got to encourage these folks, these young people, and show them the light and say, "Hey, guess what, guys? You're going to be the one paying for all of this free stuff for all of these other folks right here."
Well, and then they become conservatives.
Right. And what you see with all these other kids now is they are the second generation after LBJ did what he could to take fathers out of a lot of homes. The first generation,
Woodrow Wilson.
No. Well, LBJ in the 60s when he did everything he could to essentially take parents out of low-income families and essentially tell people that you don't need to have a mother and a father in the house. The mother's fine, and we'll pay for everything for you. The first generation tried it out, and this generation's starting to perfect the government paying for all, and that should be okay.
Exactly. Well, guys,
we are up against.
That's perfect timing because we're up against a break.
It's funny how that works. Editor-in-Chief of Pundit Press and host of News and Commentary with Dan Butcher right here on SHR Media. The incomparable, the amazing, and all the other. You just keep giving me a list of names to call you when you come on. Dan Butcher, ladies and gentlemen. Dan, thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Thanks a lot, guys.
We will be back right after this break here on the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
politicians.
You got a business. That you didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific from me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405radio.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to the Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It's an honor. It really is.
And it is a pleasure to have you here tonight,
Thank you.
sir.
I feel like we've done this already.
Yeah, well, you know, if you kind of just stayed engaged, this would be a lot easier. But, you know, you take off for 2 weeks here and there, and then just kind of live through the show.
One.
Two.
What? One. I called in the other week.
You literally phoned in the other one.
Yes. Yes, but I was here while I was in voice.
in voice and in spirit, whatever the hell that means.
Right, which is how our listeners know me.
Yes. That's exactly that. Yeah. We'll go with that. If that helps you sleep tonight, we'll go with that. That's what the listeners know you for. It's not your smart-ass personality with a huge nose.
Hang on a second.
What?
They can't see my huge nose.
They can hear it.
I'm like Flynn Rider from Tangled, right? Where they can't get his nose right in all of the wanted posters. But just a verbal version that paints these inaccurate pictures, like those inaccurate wanted posters. I wonder if I inspired those.
Well, you know, it's funny. It really should be that part of the story should be. You know, we talk about like where Lucas got the idea for the AT-AT walkers and all that other stuff. I wonder if a Pixar and or Disney writer knew you.
Or listened to the show.
Or listens to the show.
And says, we have all these different ideas in our head about what his nose is like.
And we'll never get it right. But we're going to try anyhow.
And wouldn't that be a great aside to the story?
I know you have a topic. And
so about 2 weeks ago.
Wait.
What?
Well, we are going to have a special guest join us here on Skype. So let's get into the topic, and if this person calls in, I can't say no.
Okay.
All right, just so you know.
You can't say no because it's an affirmative action thing? We'd be sued for racism?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay. So, it must be Ken.
You're making an assumption it could be ag.
No. Just the name ag is like agriculture, which denotes white person.
Yeah, that's it.
So about 2 weeks ago, there were two Russian Bear bomber aircraft that buzzed. Or they didn't really buzz it, but they flew to within a mile of the USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier. Some Navy F-18 Hornets were launched, and they escorted the planes out of the area. The bombers were flying at about 500 feet, so pretty low. And I have to wonder. Well, first of all, not entirely uncommon. We've brought up Russian interactions and flybys and so forth several times on this show. But if they were flying that close to the Ronald Reagan, the USS Ronald Reagan, Russian aircraft, shouldn't they have just fallen out of the sky?
Well, not fallen. They should have been taken right out of the sky.
Because Reagan took down...
Do you think it's a metaphor that they chose the Reagan?
I don't think they knew the difference. But maybe.
No, they know.
You know. So...
Your mom knows.
So shouldn't it was the Reagan? I mean, they should have got within radar and just fallen because that's what Reagan did to them. Either that or was this an attack? And when they realized it was the Reagan, they knew they couldn't defeat it because of the name.
So you're saying they got close, and then they realized it was Ronnie, and they were like, yeah, we're not screwing with that.
Yeah, he took down our entire country before. There's no way our two cute little bombers built in like the 20s.
This is the guy who showed up to meet our premiere in 15-degree weather and wasn't wearing a jacket and then stood outside for 3 hours and talked to him. Yeah, we're not screwing with that.
Yeah, no, we're going to go ahead. Oh, look, you're 18s. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and just fly on out of here. We're sorry.
Easy.
I love the fact that we named an aircraft carrier the Ronald Reagan. I think that we should build a ship called the USS Putin.
Oh, God, why?
And that
I hate to even ask you why, because I know you're going to have a reason.
Well, no, but hang on a second. It should either be like a sailboat with a squirt gun on it, or a target vessel. Like every ship that gets decommissioned that they use for a target vessel, they should rechristen the USS Putin.
Like every ship that gets decommissioned.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
It is, right? Like we should just have a whole fleet of ships that are decommissioned. That should be decommissioned with some dictator, right? Like
they just keep doing it.
Yeah, the USS Assad.
Yeah. The USS Lil Kim.
Right.
Hello.
The USS Castro.
And speaking of a man who happens to love my Little Kim impression, and a dear friend of the show who hasn't visited us in a long time, and that's because you
are such a racist. That's why. It's because you are such a racist.
It took all of 57 seconds of the phone call. He hasn't even got a word in edgewise. Ladies and gentlemen, the exceptional conservatives, Ken McClinton joins us now. Good evening, young man.
Where the white women at?
All over Fresno. They're just walking around dodging rocks.
No, because I'm not there anymore.
I went to Missouri. I couldn't find a white woman nowhere on the campus.
Well, you weren't looking hard enough because one of them was clearly leading the charge, and she also happened to have been a journalism
Peppermint
professor.
Patty.
Peppermint Patty.
Now, I do want to note something in a completely unrelated story. Something I happened to witness. There was a submarine launched a missile.
Yes.
Which was visible for all over California.
Yes.
For the most part. I was outside, and I was like, what is that ginormous glowing light? And I thought it was a rocket launched maybe from Vandenberg or something, but it turned out it was, in fact, a rocket or a missile launched from a sub. And there was reports, Sean, you said earlier, that they may have launched another one, too, some kind of test, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we were trying to decide exactly what this rocket, they're saying it was a test, but it's kind of a weird spot and very visible for a test to be. You thought it was something more specific. Perhaps they targeted a satellite.
Yeah, I don't know. Did they shoot down a satellite? Were they sending? I like your theory. Was there a fishing vessel on the surface? They just wanted to scare the hell out of someone as a joke.
I just picture the guy like,
or his hook caught on it.
Yeah, a little 21-foot fishing vessel, bay cruiser, and he's out there just throwing his line in, and you get the air bubble that precedes the missile coming up, and the hook gets carried on. Something. Maybe they were just giving him a hard time. Like, hey, we're gonna screw with this guy. Ken, what is your reaction?
Well, actually, Sean called me as that was happening, and he asked me if Magic Johnson was smiling. So I just want to let you know that.
Was Magic Johnson skydiving that night over Los Angeles and smiling? Okay.
Yes, he was.
The blatant bigot strikes again.
I don't get it. I'm so non-racist that I don't even understand that joke or reference. It was too bright. Like, his palms would have been turned down, too.
I'm quite certain it was over San Francisco, so I'm quite certain everyone stepped outside with their red wine and was like, "Oh my God! Look at that big light in the sky! It's just flaming across! Oh my God! I can see that's the last parade."
Wow, they're really not pulling out any stops this year on the Pride, are they? Look at that thing just sailing.
That big thing just flaming across the sky.
Do you see that, Reginald? That Socko out so he can see
it. Where's that Wookiee we got? Such a bear.
Where's the new burly guy?
Oh, you just got to comb your hair just a little bit before you go outside.
What has been going on with you, Ken? It's been so long since you visited us.
You know, I miss these moments with you all because I have a very strict and structured show, and I can come on yours and screw yours all up. So
you mean you could come be yourself?
Right.
I remember the first night Ken called in.
Oh gosh, that was one of the funniest nights.
I'm not gonna lie, I might have thought you were a crack dude on a binge. Like, I might have thought that.
Well, and we talked after the show that we honestly thought you were like a plant trying to get us to say things.
Right.
Because you were having so much fun with it. I'm like, he had to have been setting us up. And then you came back, and I was like, all right, well, nobody's wasting that much time on us.
But listen, you all have the best late night show in America. I say that often.
Thank you.
Not just because you all pay me to say it, but I say it often enough.
Cha-ching.
How?
And that is the Exceptional Conservative Show, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. here Pacific, 9 in the East Coast at theexceptionalconservativeshow.com.
Now, I want to note something. When Ken says hello, nobody calls him a racist.
No!
At all.
No!
Black privilege.
But I want that, is what I'm saying. I want that.
Well, talk to Ken. Maybe he could push some black through to you. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I was hoping it would rub off on me when we were invited.
Oh, yeah, that was gross. That was a whole... Yeah, I deleted those pictures.
No, but I want to thank you all because you all kept the security guard off me when they said there was a black man loose at Freedom Fest, and they came right over to me. You guys stood up for me.
Well, it was just you and Colonel Allen West. That was it.
I may have stood up and pointed at you, but I still stood up for you.
Followed by, he's over there, guys.
It's the one with the conservative hat. My favorite part, I kid you not, my favorite part of that whole trip is we were sitting down outside and we had a great spot at Freedom Fest, and another black guy walks by with his credentials from the show, and Ken looks at me and goes, "Who the hell does he think he is? This is my convention. I'm the guy here."
It was on my media pass. It said the guy. You know the one.
Then there was more than one, and it was just confusion. I almost.
It was chaos.
I almost fell out of my chair.
It was like the Key and Peele skit, on the slave trading block.
Yes, exactly. And the best part about it is the guy heard him and even turned and looked back as I had tears rolling down my face.
But did you notice also that none of the white women carried purses?
Yes.
Because apparently the memo got out earlier that there would actually be a black person there.
Well, they carried purses, but when they walked by the SHR booth, they didn't. They left them wherever they were. They'd send one of their crew to go scout ahead. Where is he? He's at the SHR booth. Okay, we can leave our purses this way or lock them up and then walk by.
Well, and I thought it was weird when that one person walked up and they said to Ken, you don't have to be here. You're free. And I was insulted by that. I was truly insulted by that.
Right.
Just to assume that he was working for us for slave wages, which you were actually working for us for slave wages, but that doesn't change the fact that you were there on your own free will.
Exactly. I'm a free will slave. I appreciate the moniker.
Ken, I will pay you.
I appreciate the way you all talk Joe Biden out of trying to take my chains off. So I really appreciate it.
We're here for you.
We're here for you. Ken, there is $200 of free advertising for the Exceptional Conservative if you get the T-shirt that says Free Willed Slave.
If you pay me $5,000, I'll wear it.
Are we talking per day or just one lump sum?
Negotiable. All things are negotiable.
And Ken in Vegas, and I don't really know if you've been on with us since Vegas. It seems like it was so long ago, but one of my favorite parts of Ken in Vegas was when Mrs. Big was there, and then when Mrs. Big wasn't there. Because when Mrs. Big was there, he was still happy, jovial, joking Ken, but he knew where the line was.
And the line was very, very close.
Right. When Mrs. Big would step away and go sit in on some of the speakers or whatever, you got full, unadulterated...
The line went away. There was no more line.
Well, my wife has to think that I am Christian, so it's very important to get across at all times.
And then when you and the professor would get together, that was like magic. People were in awe of, and where we were, you'd always have people walking by, but all they would get was about 5 seconds of audio. Obviously it's you guys, but they can only hear you talking for about 5 seconds. So they're walking through the conversation, and then you can almost see them stutter step and look back. Usually at the professor, saying almost like, did he really just say that to him? And then there was that uncomfortable look back as they walked away, bumping into tables, etc.
It really helps when you have a Santa Claus sitting next to you. Yeah. And when we were walking the streets, the Underground Professor, with my wife and I, the ladies loved the Underground Professor. They wanted to take pictures with the Underground Professor.
Oh, yeah.
And some of those pictures didn't cost anything. It was really a good time, man, by all.
He is, and if you haven't listened to the Underground Professor show, it's on SHR Media. You absolutely have to check it out. But the Underground Professor, first of all, is such a sweet guy in all reality. I mean, he has to be one of the sweetest.
Heart of gold.
Oh, my goodness. But he also has to be one of the funniest sons of bitches I've ever met in my life. There was not a moment that he would not have us in stitches, even on the air, which was the funniest part of him trying to get us, and not that we don't laugh when we're on the air, but he was not trying per se, but he would constantly be doing things, and people would walk by and he would just randomly grab people and start conversations, and they were just amazed by him. It
was almost like a controlled Tourette's.
And then
I must say this about Sacco. Sacco has to be one of the most attractive men on the face of the earth because all the ladies wanted to come over and pat his hair.
Oh, yes. It was amazing how many of the younger conservatives that were there, females, most of them, were interested in Sacco and were constantly like, so they do interviews with us, and then we were taking pictures with all of our guests after the show, and we had a couple of them, they would interview, and then they'd take the picture with Clint and I, or whichever one of us did the interview if we were solo, and then request to take one with Sacco anyways. And it was bizarre. I'm not going to lie. It was bizarre.
To the point where Sean even said, he's not one of the on-air personalities.
Oh, I tell you, Sacco is a babe magnet. Loved it.
Well, that's because they get caught in his hair as they walk by, and they can't get out.
It's not so much a magnet as like a spider web.
Yeah.
Just woven with his body hair. And he casts that net out.
Have you ever seen the emergency nets they have on aircraft carriers?
Yes.
It's kind of like that.
And he deploys it at will.
And I don't even know why he was trying to catch Will, but apparently he was.
Yeah.
Listen, I so enjoyed being there and also having my 13 Hours book autographed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not only by Mr. Toronto himself, Mr. Toronto himself, but also by the amazing Alan West.
Yes.
So there you go. That was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
That was lightning in a bottle.
30 minutes. That was a wonderful interview.
We couldn't have gotten any more lucky at that exact moment that Lieutenant Colonel West was walking by as Chris was talking to us. And then, to watch the people watch them, because we just kind of got out of the way. We're like, I have nothing to add to this conversation whatsoever. So we stepped back and just let them go. But on top of that, the amount of people who all of a sudden surrounded and were just enamored with both of them was amazing, and it really shows you just how awesome they are as individuals.
And then it translated to us. They were like, well, how do these two goons get these two amazing guests?
When somebody from Breitbart asks you, like, how did you book them both at the same time?
Yes.
And literally all I said was, ain't no thing, and walked away.
As I laughed and turned my back on them. Yeah, it was amazing.
I said, you apparently don't have any idea how big SHR is.
Right.
We don't either, apparently, but you surely don't. We have an inkling now. It was truly magic.
I have a question for Ken.
Okay.
Ken, are you going to the RNC?
To the
2016.
Cleveland?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do plan on going to Cleveland. I do plan on going to Texas for the Texas Convention. I do plan on going to Freedom Fest.
And we're all staying at Dan's house in Texas.
South Carolina in CPAC. So I do plan on going to all of those activities throughout the course of the year because it's essential that I'm there, number one, to hold the conservative flag up when so many moderates would love to take it from me. And secondly, you got to have at least 3 blacks for any national convention.
Yeah, but now with Ben Carson going to all of those, that almost edges you out, right?
Well, no. You need 3 in the audience. You need 1 on the right, 1 on the left, 1 in the middle, and then Alan West, up there on the stage for Doc Carson. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much, yeah.
All right. Hey, just so you know, when we all, for the Texas State Convention, which is one of the big previews to the RNC and CPAC, we're all staying at Dan Butcher's house. So, and there are so many people already there, he won't even notice.
No, he won't notice at all. He might call the cops on you.
The police will notice because there's a black guy in the neighborhood, and he says he's not Trayvon Martin. You know what I'm saying?
I just think we should all crash Dan's house. That's what I'm saying.
He's got room. He's got kids, so he's got to have some room.
We can all sleep on the porch. It wouldn't be the first time we've been relegated outside.
Well, I never have a problem in any major city that I stay in, whether it's Dallas or Chicago or, Cleveland. I don't have a major problem, simply because I can always live in the hood. I always look like somebody's family member.
And they don't even know half the time. You just show up and you're like, oh no.
Remember me?
You don't remember me? I was at the last family reunion. We sat down, we ate together. It was cool. All I can think of is...
my food stand. Come on, I can say he.
All I think of is National Lampoon's Vacation, European Vacation, where they go to the wrong house in Germany and live there for a week. Oh, man. Ken, we're getting close to wrapping the show. What do you got coming up this week on the Exceptional Conservative Show?
Well, we're going to close out our program tomorrow. We've been talking about character, and we're going to be looking at the Red Guard. Mo Boo wrote an article back in 1987 about his tenure with the Red Guard. He moved to the U.S., and he regretted every single day that he was a member of the Red Guard. And what we are experiencing in the great, wonderful J. Nixon state of Missouri is an establishment of communism in America. And if we don't fight back, it just may flow beyond Missouri into all the 50 states. So I want to talk with people about the Red Guard and watch how we deal with our young, educated people who know more than us and don't mind taking our guns and our wealth away from us.
That's going to be on the Exceptional Conservative Show.
Why don't they redistribute guns like they redistribute wealth?
Right? We could take some away from Democrats and give them some conservatives.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, actually, you should disarm every liberal, because it's been proven every time there's a massacre, there's normally a liberal behind the gun. So it's just public safety. You should just disarm them.
Well, and
all of them.
they're so against the guns anyways that they
shouldn't mind.
Right. That should be absolutely fine. The Exceptional Conservative, one of our dearest friends who we absolutely love and has one of the greatest shows on radio, Monday through Friday, exceptionalconservativeshow.com, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 on the East Coast. Chat roll is live with him. Everything's live with him. You got to check him out. Sir, as a pleasure. We love you.
We love you.
Love you, Ken. You take care, brother. God bless.
Hey, you tell.
And I meant brother like a blood thing, not like a racial thing.
Oh, now it all comes out. Well,
I had to clarify because you're such a bigot that I didn't want him taking my words the wrong way.
Folks, that's it for the Sackheads Radio Show this evening on the 11th of November, 2015. Join us next week at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast. Make sure you check out all the great SHR media shows and our affiliates. Check out our interview on Backpack and Yoda coming up on the SHR media show. Details are on their website. Thank you and have a great rest of your week.
The best late night conservative talk show in America. Immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio. The best late night conservative talk show in America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.